How's it going, everyone? And welcome to another episode of the College Football Show with your host, Alec Pecano. On today's show, I will be going over my top 15 things that I want to change about college football in this episode of the College Football Show. Let's get started. Number 15, and if y'all agree, put your thoughts down in the comment section down below on this video. But number 15 is change the targeting rule. And with every one of these things I want to change about college football, there's two bullet points that I talk about. So with targeting, the first one is, how do I say this? Clarify what targeting actually is. Because, and I'm going to always go back to the playoff, the year Ohio State played Georgia, when Marvin Harrison got hit in the head by a Georgia defensive back with the crown of the helmet of the defensive back on Georgia. And everybody's going to say that was not targeting, but they showed the replay 2 or 3 times. And as you saw, it clearly was targeting, and targeting should have been called, but it wasn't. So I would like to, if you're going to keep, I like targeting as a penalty, but you need to clarify what the targeting rule is going to be. You need to clarify it. And 2, this is the one I think they need to implement. If you get a guy that's a repeat offender of targeting, he needs to be suspended. And here's the criteria. First time offense is 1. If you get a guy that does it 3 times, the first 3 times he does it, it's a 1-game suspension. The entire game. If he does it 3 more times, so if he does it 6 times in 1 season, that's a 3-game suspension. And then if he does it again 3 more times, so that would be 9. If he does it 9 times in 1 season, that's a 5-game suspension. So he's suspended for 5 games. 5 full college football games. And if you disagree with any of the changes I want to make to college football, as always, voice your opinion down below in the comments. Number 14. And this is the one that is reigning supreme in college football right now. And I know everybody will agree with me. Conference realignment. Put a limit to conference. Number 14. Change conference realignment rules. First bullet point here is put a limit on the number of teams that could join, that could change conferences and go to a certain conference. Like, look at the Big Ten now. You added Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA. That's 5 teams. That, to me, that should be the limit for the number of teams you can add via conference realignment to whatever conference it is. Second bullet point is bring back old conferences. And I know a lot of people are going to like that. When I say bring back old conferences, bring back the old times. Bring back the Big East for football, where you had Rutgers, South Florida, Syracuse, UConn, Maryland. And I think there was one other team in the Big East at that time. But bring back old conferences. Like, bring back the Southwest Conference for football. It would open, for college football, it would open up a lot more avenues for, it would make the sport a lot more interesting and fun. Number 13, have every conference have its own TV deal. And the first thing I'm going to say here with this is have the group of 5. I understand right now that Conference USA, MAC, AAC, and a few of the other conferences, they have their own TV deal with ESPN Plus. But now that the Pac-12's technically gone, I mean, you have the Pac-2 now. Are they going to keep the Pac-12 network? If they're not, let somebody else take that and make it their own TV network, like the AAC or the Mid-American Conference or Conference USA. Let one of those teams take that and make it a TV deal for them. So then that way, that's one less team on ESPN Plus. I understand you get a lot of revenue from ESPN Plus, but if you want more eyeballs on your conference, that would make the most sense. And two, let the teams choose what network they want to play on. Like this year, 2024, the Big Ten is going to have CBS, NBC, and I believe ABC. Let the teams choose what. No, it's NBC and it's NBC, ABC, and CBS. Let the teams choose what TV network they want to play on, if that makes sense. Number 12, game times. This is the one that needs to be, I don't know when it's going to get changed, but it needs to be changed. And here's my reasoning, my two reasons why. Number one, let the teams choose what time they want to play their games. Don't have the conference they play in choose. Let them choose. I think that would make it a lot more interesting. So say like Ohio State and Michigan, the big game. It's usually a noon game, but say one year they wanted to play it under the lights they wanted to play it in prime time. Let them make that decision. Don't let the conference make the decision of what time the game is, when it's. Don't let the conference choose what time slot the game goes in. And two, if you let the teams choose what time they want to play, you'll get better matchups. You'll get better matchups and you'll get games that everybody actually wants to watch and won't turn off at halftime if it's a blowout. For example, South Florida and Alabama last year. Everybody thought that was going to be a blowout, but it finished 17-3 Alabama. And South Florida only lost by 10 points. If you played that game at night, you might have had a lot more people watching it because that week I don't think there was that many good night games in college football. At number 11, and this is another one that's kind of, I'm not going to say to the point yet, but it's going to ruin college football. Name, image, and likeness. I think there should be, here's my 2 points of emphasis on name, image, and likeness. There should be a money limit for NIL. And when I say that, I mean the school should have a limit to the number of name, image, and likeness deals they can sign with recruits. Like look at Florida State, for example. They got knocked with an NIL violation for going over their budget they had for their NIL. If you set a limit for that, you won't have teams going over their NIL funding. And two, have two different NIL name, image, and likeness money. How am I going to word this? Have two different sections for the NIL. Have one's for the transfer portal. When you sign kids out of the portal, you can use that money for that portion of the signing period, and then have NIL money for National Signing Day, where you can give kids name, image, and likeness deals on National Signing Day with whatever money you have left over from the transfer portal, and then the money you have for the name, image, and likeness National Signing Day. Number 10. This is a big one, and I hope y'all agree with me on this rule change. Change the rule from the teams coming up from the FCS to the FBS. So the first bullet point I'm going to talk about here is the change the time, change how many years they have to wait in order to be eligible to be in the conference championship game and a bowl game. So for the first part, I would change it in my personal opinion. And again, let me know what y'all think down below in the comments. But I would change it from 2 years for waiting period to get into a bowl game to 1 year. Have that 1 year of transition from FCS to FBS where you're ineligible to be in a bowl game or your conference championship game. And I think that would make it a lot more fair to these teams that move, like Delaware State is going to be next year moving from FCS to Delaware, correction. Delaware is going to be moving up to Conference USA next year. But they're going to have to wait 2 years in order to be eligible to win, to be in their conference championship game if they win their conference in their first year, and to make a bowl game. I think that should change. I think it should be 1 year you have to wait, and then you would be eligible to be in the conference championship game and a bowl game. And I think there should be a loophole for a team that's in its first year in the FBS and they win their conference. The loophole should be, I think they should be eligible to be in the conference championship game. Because that would have been James Madison. Let's take the example this year. James Madison. Really good regular season. They won their division in the Sun Belt. And they got screwed out of making the conference championship game because they were ineligible because of that rule that kept them from the 2-year rule that kept them from going to the conference championship game until next year. And I thought they should have been eligible. Now, if you let that loophole in where a team is in its first year in the FBS, if they win their conference, they should be able to make the conference championship game. If they win that, then you let the NCAA decide. Do they make a bowl game or do they get left out of bowl season? At number 9, leave, and this is my personal opinion, and y'all can either agree with me on this one or disagree. Leave the playoff at 12 teams for at least 2 years, maybe 3. And bullet point number 1 on this is it gives the group of 5 more of a chance to make the playoff. And I understand the 5x7 model. I don't really care for it because you're just going to have Alabama make it every year, Georgia make it every year, Texas, Ohio State, Michigan. You're going to have a lot of the same teams in the playoff and the top half of the playoff bracket. And it's going to make it even worse if you go to 14. So I would stay at 12. And the other thing I have to say on this is if you stay at 12 teams, there's a shot that you get new matchups every year in the playoff. A very good chance every year in the playoff. Number 8. And I want to know what y'all think. Let the fans choose the non-conference games and not the school. One, if you let the fans choose the non-conference games, you get new non-conference game. You play new non-conference games every year against different teams. And that's maybe a way you could get some new rivalries going. Like, for example, say every other year, like Ohio State plays Ohio or Bowling Green or Miami of Ohio or Kent State or Toledo or Akron or Cincinnati. That could become a non-conference rivalry. And I think that would be good for the game. Really good for the game. And the other thing about this is it makes it a lot more fair. And you don't get people complaining, oh, this team plays a cupcake non-conference schedule. Oh, like Georgia, they play nobody out of conference. This is just an example. Nothing against Georgia at all. But it's just an example. Number 7. Get rid of rematches in the conference championship games. This is especially going to happen more often now in the Big Ten, the ACC, and I think the SEC, because I think those three, I know the Big Ten and the ACC don't have divisions anymore in their conference. And the first thing I'm going to say on this topic, on this talking point, is have every team play each conference. And I think the way by doing that is you eliminate divisions. Every Power 4 conference has a 1 to whatever, how many teams are in that conference. And the top 2 teams, you play everybody in the conference. It doesn't matter if you're like the Big Ten, the way they're doing it is you play everybody, but but there's 2 teams, 2 or 3 teams you play every year. Those are your protected games. So like Ohio State, it's Michigan, and it's, I believe, it's Michigan and I believe Maryland or Indiana. It's I know Michigan's one of them, but take that kind of example. And you wash out the chance of rematches in the conference championship games. And then the last talking point on this one is have the top 2 teams in that conference play in the conference championship game. And it'll make it all interesting, and it'll make it a lot more fair to who's ever playing in that conference championship game. Number 6, more neutral site games. This is my favorite thing about college football is the neutral site games. Like Army, Navy, Oklahoma, Texas. Army, Navy, Oklahoma, Texas, Northwestern, Illinois. Sometimes they play at Wrigley Field. And here's my reasoning as to why I want more neutral site games. Gets more eyes on this sport of college football. And my explanation for that is it brings in more fans. If you have neutral site games, like there's a couple this year. There's one in Ireland to start here. Georgia Tech, Florida State. I really like I like what college football is doing with having games overseas. And last year was no. This year it's Georgia Tech, Florida State. Sign me up for more games overseas for college football, whether it be Ireland, Scotland, France, Germany, London. And the second part of this is it grows the sport even more. Say you have a game overseas and the fans really like it. They may start watching college football a lot more than they normally do because they like the brand of college football because you had a game overseas. Now we're getting into my top 5. These are 5 critical things that I would change about college football. Number 5, non-biased commentary teams. And I know there will be a lot of college football fans that highly agree with me on this. And the number one thing the first bullet point on this one that I'm going to talk about is let the fans decide who calls the games. I think with letting the fans decide, for one, it would make the game more interesting if you get a different commentary team that is split right down the middle and they're not biased toward it. I'm going to give you an example. Ohio State, Missouri last year in the Cotton Bowl. You had, I'm pretty sure it was an SEC commentary team calling the game because every play all they wanted to talk about is how good Missouri was. And this is not complaining at all. This is just being honest. Let the fans decide who calls the game. And 2, more people, sticking point number 2 on this, is more people would watch the game if you let the fans decide the commentary teams for the games. That was number 5. Number 4, leave stadiums open during the week. And this, okay, I have seen it at one stadium, and that's when I went to Ohio State last year. They do leave their stadium open during the week, but they have a set time limit, during the day that you can go and walk into the stadium and walk around and look inside the stadium. I think during the week, college football stadiums need to be open to the public from like 9 a.m. to maybe 2 or 3 in the afternoon. Let's the fans. Number 1 on this is it lets the fans tour mostly around the stadium and look at the history of that stadium. Say, for example, Ohio Stadium. If you leave it open during the week, you get people that walk in and they want to tour the stadium, and they can do that without having to physically go up and ask somebody. And I feel like that would be, yes, you could still have a direct time where you close the stadium, but make it like 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, like I said, and have it open from like 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning till that time in the afternoon. So people can walk in and just look around, have the concession stands locked up though, and any heavy memorabilia, have that locked up too. And the last thing on it is it brings back, oh no, wait. It brings in more new fans to the sport of college football and to that specific team. That's number 4. Number 3, change the overtime rule. Now, I'm not going to say I don't like the new overtime rule in college football where after the second overtime, and no, after the third overtime, they just go 2-point conversions. I like that. But here's what I would do to make it even better. Go back to the old overtime rule where after the second overtime, when you get a touchdown, you have to start going for 2 after every touchdown. Instead of just having a back and forth where you start at the 10-yard line and have to go for 2. Go back to the way it used to be. Because everybody likes the high-scoring college football games that end 67 or 75, 70. Everybody likes those, including me. Because I do over-under bet. I do over-unders on the games like that all the time. And I would love for that rule to come back in college football. And here's the thing it does. It brings back old fans. It brings back fans that left because they didn't like how they changed overtime. And number 2, transfer portal. This is one I know everyone will agree with me on, is the transfer portal. Limit the times a player could transfer, for example, and limit their eligibility. For example, I'm going to use, I think his name is Cam McCormick. He's a tight end at Miami of Florida. This is going to be his 8th year of eligibility. 8th. He's been playing college football since I was going into my freshman year of college, which was 4 years ago now. 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2024. 7 years. 7 years ago is when I started college, and he has been playing for that long. I understand injuries had a factor in it, but limit the number of times a guy can transfer and limit his eligibility. Other than COVID years, I'm okay if you give a guy 1 extra year because of COVID, but no more than that. I know they have a couple transfer portal windows. I think it's 3. Have 2 transfer portal windows. Have one after the playoff is over, and then have one after spring ball is over. After all the spring games, and the guys that don't want to stick around with the school they're at, have them be able to jump into portal. Don't have 3 transfer portal windows, because that is ruining National Signing Day. Because these kids that sign with a school, if they know for sure they're not going to play, they jump into portal right after signing with that school, and they transfer to a different school. For example, Julian Sayin. He had committed to Alabama to play for Saban, but then Saban left, and he hopped into portal, and he ended up at Ohio State. I'm not mad at that. I'm just mad that he never gave Alabama an actual chance to see what they had. Number 1, National Signing Day. And this is the big one. And I want to know what y'all think about this down below in the comments. And if you've enjoyed this video, please leave a thumbs up on it. It helps the algorithm of the video. And please remember to subscribe to this channel. Hit the notification, smash the notification bell so you don't miss a future upload. But back to the video. National Signing Day. Go back to having 1 National Signing Day where everybody signs on the dotted line and tells you where they're going to college. I don't like this having a winter signing period where some of the guys can early commit early and early enroll into school to get there before the season ends. I understand if you want them to get there and have some reps, but have National Signing Day in February. That still gives them, once they get on campus, get signed, that gives them 3 or 4 months before the actual season starts to get reps in and see and know what the coaches have to work on. And 2, raise the number of scholarships that you're giving out to the players, to the colleges. I think it's 85 right now. The magic number for me is 90. Have 90 scholarships, because you have kids that aren't on scholarship right now, like preferred walk-ons. If there's preferred walk-ons, if there was extra scholarships, you wouldn't have as many preferred walk-ons as you probably do right now. And it would higher the chances of a 2 or 3 star guy committing to the school he actually wants to play for, instead of him having to go to school he doesn't want to play for. Then he sits on the bench for a couple years and doesn't play at all. But, ladies and gentlemen, we do offer memberships here with the Sports Talk Podcast YouTube channel. They start at 99 cents a month. I'm sorry if you can't see any of the merch. We are revamping it. It should be out within the next 2 weeks. But that'll do it for me today. I will see y'all tomorrow with another episode of the Sports Talk Podcast. And it'll be, since baseball season starts next week, we will be starting our predictions, and it's going to start with the American League East. So look out for that video tomorrow at 11 a.m. Have a great day.